Part 1, the letter I never sent to him. Hey, if you're still awake, I'm glad you're here. Tonight, I'd like to tell you about a letter I once wrote, but never sent. Maybe you've written one like that too. The kind of letter that lives more in your chest than in an envelope. So just lie back, let your pillow cradle you, and let's drift gently into that memory together. It was late autumn when I wrote it. The leaves outside my window had turned the color of burnt amber, like old pages in a storybook. The wind was slow that evening, soft like a sigh through the trees. I remember sitting at my kitchen table, a cup of lukewarm tea beside me, the lamp casting a golden pool of light. I hadn't seen him in years. Not since the coffee shop. Not since that last smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. But something in the air that night, maybe the stillness, maybe the ache, made me reach for a pen. I wrote slowly, like I was remembering how to speak. "Dear you," I began, because his name still felt too heavy to say out loud. I told him about the books I'd read since he left, the songs that still made me pause, the way his name sometimes floated into my thoughts without knocking. Not out of longing anymore, but out of something quieter, something like peace. And then I folded the letter, tucked it into a drawer, never mailed it. Some letters aren't meant to travel, they're just meant to free us. Wherever you are tonight, I hope you know, some goodbyes are soft, and some silences are love too. Just rest now, you're safe here. Part 2, the drawer of unsent things. You're still here. That's good. Sometimes we don't need the whole story at once, just a quiet place to land, word by word, breath by breath. Let me tell you what else I kept in that drawer, the one with the unsent letter. It wasn't just paper, it was memory. There was an old ticket stub from a movie we never watched till the end. We had laughed too much at the previews, held hands in the dark like teenagers, even though we were old enough to know that love wasn't always easy. There was a dried daisy pressed between two napkins. I picked it on a day he said nothing, but everything about the way he looked at me felt like a promise. Or maybe I just wanted it to be. There was a photograph, not of him, but of me, taken on a morning I felt beautiful, without needing anyone to say it. I kept it to remind myself, I was whole before him. I would be whole after, and there was a receipt for a coffee and a croissant. It meant nothing to anyone else, but that was the morning he told me he was leaving. He paid, said goodbye with too much kindness. That's the kind of ending that doesn't echo, it just fades. Sometimes we keep things not because we miss the person, but because we're still learning how to let go gently. Tonight, maybe you have a drawer too. Not in wood or metal, but in memory. Don't rush to clean it out. Some pieces just need time to soften. Now close your eyes. The story's not done, but you can rest a while. Part 3, the room with the blue light. Still awake? It's okay. Some stories are best listened to with your eyes closed and your heart half open. Tonight, I'll take you somewhere quiet, to a room I once lived in at the edge of a quiet town, where the only light at night came from a small blue lamp that hummed like a lullaby. That room wasn't special to anyone but me. The walls were pale, the curtains thin, and when the wind moved through them, they looked like ghostly dancers swaying to a tune only silence knew. I remember the nights best. When the world outside felt too sharp, I would lie on that narrow bed, pull a blanket over my knees, and watch the blue light spill across the floor like calm water. I kept a journal beside the lamp. Not for secrets, just for small truths I wasn't brave enough to speak aloud. Like, I miss him today, but I don't want him back. Or, I'm not lonely, I'm just not filled yet. Or the one I read over and over, I am learning to live in the quiet, and the quiet is beginning to love me back. That room became my cocoon, not a place to hide, but a place to heal slowly, honestly, without needing anyone to watch. If you close your eyes now, can you imagine it? A room of your own, a blue light in the corner, the hum of your own breath sounding like peace. Stay there just for a little while longer. The next part can wait till you're ready. Part 4, the tea that never boiled. There's a kind of silence that happens not when no one is speaking, but when everything inside you finally exhales. That was the silence I found in my aunt's kitchen, on a Tuesday afternoon that stretched like honey. Nothing urgent, nothing heavy, just stillness. She had invited me over for tea, but we never made it that far. The kettle sat untouched on the stove, the leaves resting in a little porcelain bowl, as we sank into chairs that creaked softly beneath us. I thought I needed to talk, I told her, but maybe I just needed to be somewhere where I didn't have to. She smiled, as if she knew exactly what I meant. That moment, no tea, no big conversation, just the hum of the refrigerator and a breeze shifting the lace curtain, is one of the warmest memories I carry. Funny, isn't it? How healing sometimes looks like two women sitting across from each other not saying much, but feeling heard. There's a kind of listening that doesn't involve ears at all. And in that kitchen, with its chipped tile and the smell of dried lavender, I remembered something I'd forgotten. I didn't need to be fixed. I just needed space to feel like myself again. So maybe you don't need answers tonight. Maybe you don't need to name what's hurting. Maybe it's enough to sit beside the kettle and let it be still, just like you. And if you want to stay here longer, I'll wait. Part 5, the book I never finished. Some stories aren't meant to end, not because they go on forever, but because we stop reading them. And somehow that feels right. There's a book I keep by my bedside. Its pages are soft from years of turning, and there's a pressed leaf between chapter 7 and 8. I never made it past that chapter. Not because the story wasn't good. It was beautiful, actually, but something about it felt complete. As if the part I needed to hear had already spoken to me. I remember the day I stopped reading. It was raining. One of those gentle, rhythm-tapping rains that makes the world slow down. I had a candle burning, a blanket pulled up to my chest, and the book resting open on my lap. I turned the page and paused. There, in the space between sentences, was something unexplainable. Like someone had whispered, "That's enough for now." And so I closed it, not out of disinterest, but reverence. We don't always need to reach the end to find the meaning. Sometimes the part that heals us is just a moment in the middle. A phrase, a character who reminded us of someone, a silence between words that echoed something true. Tonight, you might be holding your own kind of book, a memory, a relationship, a version of yourself. Maybe you haven't finished it, maybe you never will, and maybe that's okay. Some chapters stay open because they still hold us gently inside them. And as you drift now, know that it's safe to rest in the middle of your own story. Part 6, the light under the door. When I was a child, I used to fall asleep watching the soft light slipping under the crack of my bedroom door. It meant someone was still awake, someone was near, and that was enough to make the dark feel safe. Even now, as an adult, there are nights I leave a hallway lamp on. Not because I'm afraid of the dark, but because part of me still remembers that comfort. That quiet promise, you're not alone. There's a light like that in all of us. Sometimes it shines for others when they're too lost to find their way. Sometimes it's a light we keep on for ourselves, so we can stumble back home after long days, hard seasons, and the kind of heartbreak that doesn't make noise. I once knew someone who said, even in silence, someone might be waiting. And I think of that when the world feels too heavy, when I can't quite explain why I'm tired, or why I need to cry without needing a reason. Some nights, healing doesn't come in big ways. It comes in tiny flickers, a warm drink, a friend who texts just thinking of you, or the memory of a hallway light still glowing long after you've gone to bed. If tonight is one of those nights where your chest feels a little too full or a little too empty, then let this story be your small light, glowing quietly under the door of your heart. You don't have to open it. You don't have to speak. Just know it's there. Still on, still here. Shar, Part 7, the cup of tea that waited. There's something quietly sacred about a cup of tea left waiting. Not the kind forgotten on a cluttered desk, but the kind made intentionally, set on a table, with hope that someone would return to drink it. I remember a rainy evening years ago when I came home heavier than my coat. The kind of tired that lives in your bones, not your muscles. The kind of silence where even your thoughts begin to whisper, too weary to shout. And there it was, a cup of chamomile, steam curling softly as if it had been breathing in the quiet just like me. It was my mother who left it there. No notes, no words, just warmth in porcelain. She didn't ask questions. She didn't offer advice. She only made tea. And somehow that was enough. Since then, I've started making quiet gestures for the people I love. A light left on in the hallway, a blanket folded at the foot of a couch, a soft song playing in the background before they even ask for comfort. It's not about fixing anything. It's about being a soft place for someone to land when the world feels too sharp. If tonight you need a soft place, a gentle pause, a quiet gesture just for you, then let this be your cup of tea, still warm. Take a sip. Exhale. You made it through the day. You don't have to explain anything. Not here. Not tonight. Part 8, the times we said nothing. There are moments so delicate they dissolve if you speak. Moments when silence becomes the softest form of love. I remember sitting on a porch swing beside someone who had nothing left to say. Not because there weren't words, but because none of them would have helped. The wind was brushing through the trees like a lullaby with no melody. We just sat, breathing, existing in the same quiet ache. There's a strange kind of closeness that happens when you stop trying to fix things. When you stop offering advice and start offering presence. Just the weight of your body beside theirs. Like a lighthouse not shouting for the ship to come in, but simply being there, a light in the dark in case they want to steer home. I've learned that the most meaningful comfort is sometimes a shoulder within reach. A look that says, I'm still here, even when everything else feels lost. If tonight your chest feels too heavy for words, if your story knots in your throat, if all you want is to sit in the company of someone who doesn't need you to speak, then stay here. Let this silence be the hand on your back, the porch light left on, the quiet swing that never stops rocking. You're not alone in this hush. Some of us are just waiting beside you in the dark without needing to know your sorrow, because sometimes not asking is the kindest thing of all. Tip. Part 9, when everything looks the same but isn't. Some mornings you wake up and everything looks the same, but nothing feels the same. The mug is still in its usual place. The curtain still sways with the breeze. The kitchen still smells like slightly burnt toast. And yet, something inside you has quietly shifted. I once sat in a morning like that, stirring my tea, as if the last thread holding everything together had just slipped through unseen fingers. You can live with someone for years, and one day realize that your eyes no longer meet. Your voice no longer calls them home. Just two parallel rhythms, drifting silently toward nowhere in particular. But in mornings like that, I also learned to stop resisting. Some things are not meant to be fixed, only accepted, and then gently released. Tonight, if you're lying here, listening to the steady spin of the fan, with a heaviness in your chest like a season of rain, know that you are walking through a turning point. It may not feel easy, but there is light at the end of that quiet bend. Not all change is loss. Sometimes it is the first breath of freedom. So close your eyes. Don't mourn who you were, because someone new, someone quietly powerful, is waiting for you on the other side of sleep. Part 10, the quiet courage of letting go. Letting go doesn't always feel like bravery. Sometimes it feels like doing the dishes in silence, like folding someone else's sweater for the last time, like answering, I'm fine, when your heart is a room full of unopened boxes. There was a day, I remember it so clearly, when I walked into the apartment and felt it, the stillness of a space where love had quietly left. No slammed doors, no final fights, just an absence, thick as fog, thin as air. It's strange how absence can be louder than presence, how a silence can echo louder than words ever did. But it was in that echo I found something else, a sound even softer, a whisper I had long forgotten, my own voice. It didn't shout, it didn't demand. It simply said, you don't have to stay small to be loved. You don't have to shrink to fit someone's emptiness. Letting go was not an act of defiance. It was an act of return to myself, to warmth, to mornings that didn't start with apology. So if tonight your hands are tired from holding on, let this be your permission. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to release. You are allowed to begin again, not because you failed, but because you were brave enough to choose peace over pretending. Sleep now. The hardest part is already behind you. Part 11. When the house forgot how to hold us. Some houses don't fall apart all at once. They forget. They forget how to echo laughter, how to carry warmth through the walls, how to hold two people in one silence without letting the silence grow teeth. Ours forgot slowly. First, the bedroom light stayed off longer. Then dinners became quiet, Not because we were content, but because we had run out of reasons to try. There was no shouting, only absence wearing the clothes of routine. I remember watching him tie his shoes one morning, a simple act, and wondering, when did I stop being the reason he smiled before leaving? I watched the way his shoulders hunched inward, as if he, too, felt the weight of all we weren't saying. And I didn't blame him. Sometimes love doesn't disappear. It just softens, then drifts. We became like two books left open on opposite ends of a couch, still full of stories, but never read aloud again. But here's the quiet truth. Not all endings are failures. Some are gentle mercies. Some are the soul's way of saying, this chapter is finished. Thank you. So if your house has forgotten how to hold you, you don't have to wait for it to fall. You can walk away before the cracks become caves. You can carry the memories without carrying the weight. Tonight, let the past loosen its grip. Let the silence soften. Let yourself become light again. Part 12, the night I slept without waiting for his key. There's a strange kind of freedom in not waiting. No ears straining for the click of a lock. No heart pausing at the sound of footsteps outside. Just night. Just stillness. Just me. That evening, I made tea for one, set a single cup down on the kitchen table, and didn't feel lonely, just honest. For years, I left a lamp on in the hallway, a quiet beacon, as if the light could remind him that someone still hoped. But lamps don't change people, and hope, left unreturned, turns to dust on windowsills. I lay in bed that night, no second pillow lifted, no quilt pulled tighter to one side, and the emptiness didn't echo, it exhaled, like a room that had held its breath for too long. I thought I'd cry, but all I did was breathe, a kind of breathing that felt like beginning, not dramatic, not loud, but clean, uncluttered. Sometimes the bravest thing we do is choose rest over reaching, not because we stopped loving, but because we finally started loving ourselves more. That night, I dreamed of oceans, wide and quiet, no shore in sight, but no fear either. And when I woke, the house was still, but it felt like mine again. If tonight you are waiting for an apology, for a change, for someone who no longer knocks, let sleep come instead. Let the waiting go. You are allowed to rest even when the story is still unfinished. Part 13. The morning I didn't check my phone first. It was just a small thing, a quiet rebellion against habit. I woke up and didn't reach. Not for the screen, not for the unanswered messages, not for the man who stopped texting good morning. Instead, I opened the curtain just slightly, let the first light fall gently on the bedsheets, soft as forgiveness. There was no rush, no urgency to perform being okay, no need to document proof of healing. Healing, I've learned, is often invisible. It doesn't ask for witnesses. In the kitchen, I cracked an egg into a pan, watched the yolk stay whole, fragile, but intact, a small victory, like me. There were still echoes in the corners, the mug he used, the key hook still holding two. But today, I didn't organize the past. I let it be messy, unresolved, like all real things are. My phone buzzed once, a friend, not him. I smiled, not because I'd moved on, but because I'd moved inward. There's a difference between checking for love and choosing peace. This morning, I chose. And if today you are holding your breath before you look at a screen, wondering what silence means, maybe set it down, just for a little while. The world can wait. Your heart needs gentler hands than his absence. Drink your coffee slowly. Watch the light stretch across the floor. Let the quiet be your companion. The beginning of peace doesn't always feel loud. Sometimes it sounds exactly like nothing. Part 14. When I finally watered the plant we bought together. It sat there for weeks. That little pot by the window, soil cracked, leaves curling at the edges like they too had grown tired of waiting. We bought it on a Sunday. After brunch, you said something cheesy, like how we were planting roots, and I laughed even though it scared me, how much I wanted that to be true. After you left, I told myself I'd keep it alive. As a promise, as a protest, as proof that something we started could still grow without you. But the days blurred. Morning after morning, I'd pass it by, like passing an old version of myself I wasn't ready to forgive. Today, though, something was different. I filled a glass, not the one you used, a new one, clean, undecorated. I poured slowly, like I was afraid the plant might reject the gesture, the way you rejected second chances. And as the water sank into the soil, something softened in me too. It wasn't dramatic, No cinematic music, just the quiet gulp of thirst finally quenched. Maybe we both went dry, waiting on someone who no longer knew how to show up. But today, I did. For the plant. For me. Grief doesn't always come in sobs. Sometimes it comes in silence, in dirt under your nails, in a leaf that's not dead yet. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's everything. The plant is still small, still a little bent, still healing, just like me. Part 15. The letter I never sent, but always wrote. Dear you, I don't know if this letter is for the version of you that held my hand or the one that walked away. But I write it anyway, because there are words that live in the throat too long and start to feel like stones. It's quiet here tonight. The kind of quiet that doesn't ache, just hums gently, like something has finally been laid down. I want you to know, I'm not angry anymore. Not because I've forgotten, but because anger is a heavy coat, and I'm learning how to feel the sun again. I used to think closure needed two people, but sometimes you give yourself the ending because the story deserves it. Because you deserve it. I kept your old coffee mug. It doesn't hold memory anymore, just tea. And the books we read together, I finished them. Even the ones I was afraid to touch because they still smelled like us. I learned to sit with the silence, to let it be soft instead of sharp, to let it hold me instead of haunt me. Maybe healing isn't a straight path. Maybe it's a letter you write 100 times in your head and never send, but it frees you anyway. So this is me, not needing a reply, not expecting a return, just writing it all down so I can finally sleep without rehearsing what I never got to say. Sleep well, wherever you are. I hope your nights are kinder now. Mine finally are. The end.